Hi, everyone, and welcome back to Simplify's webinar series. We know it's been a while since our last session, and we're excited to be bringing these back. Our goal with these series is simple, to share the kind of work we do every day with clients across the world, and to spark conversation about how technology, automation, and great design can transform how businesses operate. We've been growing, and we wanted to take a step back and give people, whether you're a client, a partner, or someone curious about what we do, a real look into how we think and how we deliver. If you have any questions throughout the webinar, don't hesitate to send them in, and we'll try our best to answer them as we move through the topics. Today's session is all about shared services and how AI is completely reshaping what's possible in this space. It's a topic we're super passionate about, and joining me today is someone who's been deep in this work for over 15 years. Danilo is a managing director of Simplify Spain, and he's led massive global shared service transformation across industries from logistics to tech to pharma. Danilo, I know you've been hands-on with these challenges for years. Can you start by telling us a bit about yourself, how you got into this space, and what excites you about it today?
Absolutely. Good afternoon. Hi, everyone from Central Eastern Time Zone. First of all, thank you so much for organizing this lovely opportunity, this platform, forum, if you like, for enthusiasts across the region and EMEA-wide, where we can hopefully discuss and share certain things, new changes in our never-ending evolution of the industry. And looking quite forward to obviously speak about these topics in details and share some insights and some opinions if we're lucky to obviously have some questions or perhaps some comments during the course of this session. For the ones who know me, they do know me. For the ones that don't know me, my name is Danilo Baritarevic. I'm a managing director of Simplify Spain, and I have been lucky to a great deal of my career be a spectator, witness, and an active participator when it comes to shaping, reshaping, analyzing, evolving, and kind of capturing the industry of shared service centers, service desks, help desks, and all variety of different, but very similar, and now in 2025, quite almost identical type of work, given obviously the evolution of technology and what we're going to achieve with the same. So I started my career, I was very lucky to start my career in a company called NCR in Serbia, where I basically started from a level one service desk analyst role, which is something I really appreciate about myself and my career journey, because it gave me an absolute feel for the matter. It gave me an opportunity to advance in obviously technology and later on, of course, people management, and gave me ultimately the touch and feel how technology is being dispersed, how we're architecture-wise, from architectural perspective, why we do things we do, why the customers are having the pain points they have, how this is all fitting into one cohesive unit. And I started, like I said, career in that role, but then I quickly moved to the ranks and ultimately graduate and moved to become a manager of a variety of different service desks, shared service pieces, and help desks within the domain of NCR portfolio of services and managed services division that belong to category of retail, communication, finance, insurance, and some other industries. Later on, I moved to a company called Curie Nagel, where I wanted to explore a bit of and a flavor of logistics supply chain and value chain. Of course, how this is all feeding into from a beginning to the end, and how shared service centers and let's see, supporting mechanisms, operational supporting mechanisms are working side by side, and how can they be deployed in a successful manner. And from that moment on, I moved to Spain, where I made Madrid my new base of operations for me and my family, where I led different companies such as Insight Technology Solutions and Salonis, before we obviously kind of taking the role of Simplify, and where also I explored a bit of bits and pieces where I fit better, new challenges, new obstacles, and new hurdles to be overcome. So in a nutshell, in short, that's me. This is my kind of career path, kind of career road.
Thanks for that, Danilo. Super excited to be talking today. Jumping right in, what are the biggest differences between old school shared service centers and where things are headed now? And what's the biggest mindset shift clients need to make when moving away from traditional shared service centers?
Well, these are very good questions. Again, thank you so much, and perfectly thank you for using this descriptive momentum with old school, new school. It's quite very good. So let's start with obviously kind of deep diving historically. What was a first glimpse of shared service centers or service desk departments or all these very similar entities or sub-entities in business departments and units within one company? So 20, 25 years ago, or even before, but let's say effectively 20, 25 years ago, the idea and the notion for creation, development, and deployment of a shared service center like an entity was behind the fact that someone out there had a process or plural with a certain amount of people working that process or plural on that location that costed a certain amount of money. And as from a ROI perspective, it was quite easily manageable and it's quite easily to measure this cost, time, material, money-wise, hour-wise, whatever. The idea of shared service center was, again, behind the fact that by employing different various procedures and by employing shift in changes in the let's say implementation of the existing work to a different location with different people using the same process or modified process was the idea. Then to obviously then recalculate that same cost. So that's how the beginning of shared service center started. So we on one side we had potential locations that were expensive with people workforce that was streamlined for one skill only, as an example, and we have an X, Y, and Z number of manforce or workforce in this case that were in charge for something else. Of course, later on, the sole purpose of this was once we were able to quantify, capture, measure the process, and then understand how many people we have from workforce perspective and what that location can offer us when it comes to skill, when it comes to cost effectiveness, the potential of return of investment would be present, and then it would absolutely be calculable. So the stakeholders will be available and ready to see potential improvement. So this is how that was how the traditional old school way of doing things were solidified in, let's say, later 90s and early 2000s of this type of work. And then as the time was passing, and then the new tools and technology evolved and developed, the customer designs and the customer claims and demands were absolutely higher. And as expected, as the natural evolution of the demand is going, where the technology needs to follow, otherwise the industry would be in problem. So we were then obviously forced to evolve ourselves by implementing different frameworks, methodologies, different tool sets, data, and everything that would be in service of us in order for all of us to work on the same goal, and that's to provide internal or external better service to the customer, reduce times, no leakage, no waste, no attrition, and all these kind of metrics and KPIs that were evolving as well. So from, let's say, it's kind of very linear, easy to calculate, you have A, B, and C transported to E, F, and G. We started like this, and then we moved on to absolutely small powerhouses that are one-stop shops. They don't have silos anymore. They have multidisciplinary cross-location and cross-skilled employees with different set of skills and different set of talents, multi-language support, AI power tools, and other kind of trinkets and tricks of the trade, of course, that completely reshaped, and they are still, because it's a continuous tense, they're still reshaping the landscape of support in any given moment. Is it a shared service or a desk or professional service or managed service? Still, the similar rules apply.
What do you think is usually the wake-up call moment for a client when they realize their shared service model isn't working, so their shared service center model isn't working anymore?
So that's a really good question. So the wake-up call is usually when The new demand, of course, comes when it comes to cost saving. From let's say from finance teams who are cascading down their budget, they're changing policies, moving from flexible to zero-based budget, or whatever is happening. When the stakeholders are actually reading the paper and the sheet, and then they realize, okay, with this they have 11, 12, 13, 14, 15, whatever that percentage margin of saving, but the workload behind to actually upkeep and maintain this is tremendous. And that's why they usually think, like, okay, is this all worth it? Should we employ more traditional methods, like all the employers are like to say restructuring and all these kind of things. So that's why they turn into obviously vendors who are quite innovative in this field, and they are ready and willing to test new things and obviously work side by side with the customer to employ new technologies, new processes, new frameworks in order to achieve greater state, better momentum, and not only that, to provide better service. And by providing better service, kind of increasing their brand visibility and all this kind of non-tangible miscellaneous outside of macroeconomy concepts that are very important and much needed in today's severe, steep competition time and very severe landscape when it comes to competitors.
Mm-hmm. All right, so now we've talked about how shared service centers are evolving. Let's get into what that actually looks like in practice. What are the actual services we bring in to change that picture?
Absolutely, yeah. So I'm going to be plastic in this moment in time, and then of course give us a couple of examples that are quite technical when it comes to this, so our audience has more firm grasp, obviously, what we're trying to achieve and what we simply are trying to achieve in this case. So let's say 7, 10 years ago, the typical shared service would obviously start by, let's say, employing certain people to do some transitioning of, let's say, 4 or 5 processes within the accounts payable, accounts receivable team, or HR, or public acquisition, or any type of service that is quite easily measurable when it comes to obviously quantifying results. So let's say that we have 20 processes, 50 people. So the idea is obviously to move these 20 processes location B or the same location, but instead of 50 people, use the number of people who are up to train, have more knowledge, they have more capacity, they have certain tools available upon them, and they are absolutely ready, super easy to deploy and scalable for the new processes that potentially can come. So that's the idea how we, like I said in the beginning, how we open with this industry in this sector. Now we realize, all of us realize that's not enough. That's absolutely not enough because the competition is high, so you need to offer something new. You need to offer not only something new, but you need to provide this very, very big and important moment of presentation and feeling inside the customer relationship bubble, and that's trust. So by obviously creating this trust bubble, you need to work side by side with the customer in order to achieve what is the desired state of their, let's say, ecosystem. So that's why we now that's why we are employing new unique combinations of IT, automation, reporting, business intelligence, and different types of visibility. So our customers are really real-time notified and real time they can be advised by us as an experts what the potential next move for them in order to reduce additional layer of waste or leakage. So what we have here is about some slight more, not a roadmap, but some suggestions. What do we offer in this new, say, core services content and portfolio? So what we do is that we employ new generation service desks. So it's not only like back in the good old era, golden days of service desk, paid per contract or paid per specific kind of package. It's way more unified. It's designed to work like a one-stop shop, but providing 24/7 support, different vendors in unified plan versus completely simplified on one fixed price contract. As an example, the idea of this is that customer doesn't need to think about what is going to happen, when to call, check that department, please go back, and then those old school bouncing back from a person to person, from a bot to bot, AI to an AI, whatever. So you have the idea is to have this nexus of services that are connected, and from a customer perspective and standpoint, once you get a hold of your desired vendor, in this case, let's say, simplify an example, you don't need to think what's going to happen in the background. You're just going to employ us to deal with your problem. Then the second thing, we have business process integration and re-engineering. This is the key. Because traditional old school way of shared service centers were just designed by reactive and reactionary. Which means in this case is that we have a parchment or an Excel sheet processes. Boom, there you go. This is what you need to do for us. It's going to cost such and such, and we have a renewal next year. We're going to talk about it. Do we add? Do we remove something? But that's not the point. The point for us, what we want to achieve with our customers, to proactively giving them our insights. We will use potential process mining tools, the best of the in the best of the class, and secondly now that are absolutely available to us and the customers in 24/7, giving insights how potential processes are driven, how they're mapped. Is there any inconsistency? Is there any deviations? Are we ready to kind of do a deep dive? Is the customer ready? Is there any maturity? So with this automation first mindset, we are ready to obviously portray a broader picture to the customer and together with them potentially streamline workflows, prevent bottlenecks that will ultimately reduce of the traditional break fix issues caused and that are potentially going to the service desks in this case. Then later on, then we have digital information as a service or DTS. It's something that was unheard of up until recently and still unheard of in majority of vendors' portfolio. This is where we absolutely were collectively decide again, everything for us is side by side. Humans are in the center of everything, even though we employ so many, let's say, artificial intelligence in this case, but humans are in the center. So what the idea is to deliver maturity assessment on understand how a company, in this case a customer or client, is ready to move from say stage C to stage G or whatever is the letter in the end. And this is not like, of course, serious case of assessments and analysis, of course, using the AI power roadmaps to make sure it falls against all different pieces within the one company, different departments, different business units. So once we have this maturity level, and once we have the readiness, let's call this capacity readiness, right? We are absolutely ready to continue with advanced and additional simplification of the processes and waste leakages that are potentially ready to be removed and reduced. That's why we then employ RPA as a service, robotic process automation. We, of course, after this robust analysis and let's say recommendations, we proceed to automate repetitive tasks with no code RPA or code RPA, depending on the case, to cut costs by up 50% across people. Then you see it's stacking, all these improvements are stacking, and ultimately, again, relieving the pressure from the service desk, relieving the pressure from whoever is there to tend the customer needs. And instead of like having 500, let's say 500 instances of touches, if you like, that's all universal touches, gradually we're sitting on 12 months, but we'll come to a situation that we have 50. So we're attacking from every direction, all these customer experience, customer onboarding, these NPS scoring, satisfaction levels, and working collectively in one ecosystem to achieve greater precision for the client. And then ultimately, the multi-vendor and IT business process support is critical for the customers who are having a lot of vendor contracts and a lot of services outsourced by someone else. In today's time, when everything is a software as a service in a way, everything SaaS or PaaS, it's critical that there's a good control, that you don't need a specific finance team or vendor management team, or you need like a customer success, customer engagement team to track vendors, but you can rest at ease because Simplified or our teams or some dedicated people from our one-stop shop are going to be mindful on this as well. Of course, by employing event management, monitoring, keeping track, cost, and allocate the resources that internally are being used in core businesses, let alone later on us again working together to improve the processes and maybe kind of move from the old existing models to new ones uncharted and not deployed until now. So that's kind of where we are in this new core services. So, yeah.
Yeah, so that's kind of the what we're doing so far. How do we actually bring this to life? What's the approach we follow when we're rolling this out?
Absolutely. So luckily in front of us for our tutorial, we have our methodology. So this is of course like only a high level methodology because this is such a serious industry with so many add-ons, so many different subtle, not some of them not that subtle, but still that's why we don't have a clone proof high level capture methodology, and then we believe it's one of the best in class because we like to be thorough. We like to be thorough in our approach. So we start with the assessment of business alignment. It's not only about the process, it's about what is the current company's business strategy, what is the vision, what is the value proposition of that business unit or business department, let's say even the company itself. So we align the tangibles with verbals, we align the non-verbals with obviously some sentiments. This is all giving us a greater picture and information. And remember, information is the king. We're living in such a specific time when it comes to technology. So that's why all these companies in process mining, task mining, and data entry, data mapping, engineering, and all this are now flourishing like shrooms after the rain night, because obviously they are so heavily needed to give us the backbone of our decision-making process, and that's data. So first of all, we employ assessment and business alignment. And once we discover this, let's say this discovery stage, by obviously employing standardization, optimization, best in the class frameworks such as Lean Six Sigma, we move on to standardization because, of course, we don't want a jungle of a process or a jungle of a workload or day-to-day operation. We want something standardized. And then, of course, by natural rule of gravity, we want to optimize. Before actually moving on to detailed analysis and documentation and kind of these deployable, smaller deployable actions, we want something to be optimized and standardized. So we have, excuse me, so we have smaller chunks, even chunks or processes or whatever is the next entity. And then we move on, of course, detailed analysis and documentation. Here, again, going back to data, if you know something, it doesn't work anything if it's not written. That's the old school, middle school, new school, college degree, whatever you want. This is the symbol of all good, sustainable business. If it's not written, it's not captured, it's stipulated, everybody knows it doesn't exist. So for us, documentation is the key. Then, of course, perhaps maybe the most interesting part of our methodology, after these assessments and this analysis, we are meticulously approaching digital transformation with intelligent automation. Why I say intelligent automation? Because we don't need to automate everything in the beginning. We, of course, gradually, by not jeopardizing obviously operational flow and operations of day-to-day business, we are intelligently automating the existing potential capacity and continuously looking back to see the stability, to see the last known good status, just to see how we're gonna proceed in within the cycle of these events. And then, of course, once this is optimized, standardized, optimized, analyzed, and automated in a way, whatever way this way may be, we're moving into implementation. We implement these changes with the best and second and untouched methodologies and frameworks where we are absolutely mindful about our customers' journey and their legacy, their branding, and their service that they're providing to their external customers. So our uptime is absolutely key for our customers. And then from there, we move to a lovely service transition. Some would call this baby or honeymoon or chaperoning or whatever is the word, but this is where we do service transition. This is where we really have all hands on deck. We make sure that this kind of hypercare, if you like, period, we absolutely track, measure, and not allow anything bad to happen to the ecosystem of our customer. And from there on, we see the cycle starting to kind of shape up and, of course, become slightly repetitive, or slightly change it and repetitive. From there, we move on to continuous monitoring as one of the kind of most important pieces of our puzzle, because we continuously monitor operations of our customers and their domain. And with that, in case that we have monitoring only, we move on to continuous improvement, which is, of course, something that is key. We want to evolve and we want to simplify additionally, we want to provide more capacity, we want to provide more resources for less, and all these things will get in a global story productivity. And then we continuous improvement, we analyze all these things, analysis, performance, trainings, new additional KPIs, tracking, reviews, innovation, technology, process-wise, and ultimately mentorship, because the heart of all of this is human interaction. So if we don't mentor, if we don't enable our employees, that matter their internal or their customer, this whole story doesn't help. So that's why we are there continuously. And then if we decide that it's time for a change, something's not working, or customer wants additional workload being done, that we come to change request, which is our absolutely standardized normal format of items change management, and from there on we kind of employ this circle of circle of trust, because these are already standardized measurements, and then we move on back to intelligent automation and transformation, and then this is it. So essentially, the key takeaways from here is at part of every step are humans. Trained enablers, as I like to call them, the ones who are ready to be mentors, ready to be educators, and the ones who are actually doing the work. Only having the customer discovering everything that's unknown, they are absolutely approaching to this as a unique work, as every project or every possible shared service centers, that's similar is quite unique. So this is in the heart of everything. It's humans powered by good methodology, good framework, best in class tools.
Where do you think that clients usually get stuck in this process?
So they're absolutely stuck between the first three processes. These are the most difficult ones. First of all, the business is business, and as we know, it's always aligned to the ones who are the lowers for revenue, and the ones for cost savers, for cost saving departments, or at least the ones who are support models are the ones who are having smaller scale, so sort of, let's say like that. So sometimes communications and misalignments are big, sometimes not that big, smaller, but between assessment and alignment is the first challenge. The second challenge is how to standardize it. Should be standardized by employing IT best frameworks, or we need to kind of be a bit flexible, because of course there's a reason why we cannot standardize everything in the same manner. And of course, optimization, how to optimize it by not jeopardizing the cash flow part and everything else. So I firmly believe that this is the key. Once these three are combined, once these three are somehow completed with, let's say, at least 90% of success formality, in this case, I think I know the rest of them are absolutely straightforward. Let's call it.
So now we've talked about the how. Let's talk about the tech that makes this work. What kind of tools are we actually using to support all of this?
So we as our lovely landscape is evolving. We are evolving with our landscape, so there's no doubt about that. This is something we cannot evade, nor we would like to evade. The only problem is obviously sometimes it's our job is to be the best, and to employ the best tool, the latest updates, and everything, latest functionalities. But unfortunately, the customers are not always in the same boat, in the same view, because of course, then this is a cost for us, is mandatory too. So we try to obviously provide a different, larger and broader portfolio of different tools, because our IT is to be as much as we can flexible to accommodate different requests from our customers. So of course, we have process modeling tools from Visage, from Visio, from Process Maker, who's the best and most popular one, I would say. Then we move on to process mining tools. These are, mind you, of course, we are gold and platinum platforms between all of us. So these are our very, very reliable partners and advisors, vice versa. So from process mining tools, we employ Soroco company, their amazing tool called Scout, and from Solons we employ EMS 2.0, which is their core tool when it comes to this. Of course, we have a variety of tools. This we actually have the biggest diversity, because the customer has started to use something, and of course it becomes a legacy tool for the IT departments. From that perspective, I believe that Power Automate, UiPath, Automation Anywhere, Robotic AI, RoboMotion are the ones who are there, the most popular ones are listed in these quadrants. So again, we know more and we're ready to work. Other tools are, of course, some capacity need for depth, and for development, we use Python, Selenium, and of course we employ a variety of other tools. That's the request as well. And then we have the bottom layer, or let's say these three boxes with tools. Of course, this illustration-wise, there's only two, but of course, we have way more in our disposal. These are just the most popular ones and the best tools in practice when it comes to ITSM tools, workforce management tools, and communication tools. So from ITSM tools, President and Zendesk are the most popular ones, the ones who are being employed by, let's say, the highest number of medium-sized companies and enterprise companies as well. They're quite they're quite easy to deploy. They're cloud-based, of course, they have on-premise solutions. So with that, we can kind of cover every type of customer when it comes to implementation. And for workforce management tools, we have GSOC, Workday, and many more CRM will collect type of HR platforms and data manipulation tools as well. And columns, of course, we have Describe because they are leaders and majority of customers are using these tools from a communication perspective and IP tables.
Let's bring all this now to life with some case studies. The first one here is about a retail transformation. Can you walk us through this?
Absolutely, with the greatest pleasure. This is one of the biggest challenges that we endure and we encountered in our professional careers when it comes to a typical retail customer. Because of course we cannot mention names in this lovely webinar, but we will mention in a quite cryptic way. This is one of the biggest retail customers in the world, biggest. And of course they have one of the biggest service desks entities in North America. And this team was their back office. So the client operated with a lot of readiness and talks a number of technologies that's absolutely not sustainable for them. Their challenge, apart from the huge financial implications, which we see a lot of part of the table, apart from that, their branding, their reputation was at stake, their communication in this inter IT circles was at stake as well. So what the customer wanted is to completely remove and reduce every possible thing that should not be there. So in a way, sounds like an easy task because you have a carte blanche, if you like, so you absolutely have the ability to do whatever because the customer is absolutely happy in almost every aspect of their day-to-day business operations. But the other kind of side of that coin is that the demand is huge and the visibility is extremely high, which means that every potential error is going to be weighted as 10 times 10. So what did we do? What we implemented, we were taking how to proceed there, but then we implement the state-of-the-art systems. So that all the later on shares exponent for that particular customer. But we employed service desk by using modern frameworks and methodologies to support the seamless service transition. And the key was to implement all these things that they were missing. So we were focused on deep estate and analysis, what they're missing, and we were focused, okay, let's build that. So we give them something that we know that they don't have. And of course, let's employ all these proper shared service models because otherwise we will absolutely be unable to reduce the number, to reduce the values. So let's say that before we took them over this kind of service position and this length of improvement, if you like, that was last 12 months. Before that, the client started with the 2072 level 1 agents, level 1 service desk agents, and 66 level 2 service desk agents. They had some overall general rule of thumb, 23% of abandoned calls, 25 minutes average sharing time. These are super big numbers. And their FCR, first call resolve, like remote resolve, was 37%. Voice resolve in this case was only remote resolve without FCR, it was 37%. And ultimately, one mentioned that it's not suiting anybody well, it's attrition. So they have around 22% attrition on their service that's prior to transition to us. And one of the maybe key things to highlight, tree of small, that's of course small trees, of course, from a statistic perspective, is the knowledge base. They had zero on it. So that we practically that whoever receives any type of incident or request or action or task, they were focusing obviously on spreading certain individual pieces of information automations, notebooks, some Word files, OneNote. Back in time, I'm not really sure how this was organized. So of course, there was no streamline driven, IP-driven procedures and kind of implementation of key features such as knowledge management in this case. And ultimately, the key thing was the cost of operation. The cost of operation is $16.2 million per year, dollars in this case, and that was absolutely tremendous money for them. So once we implement best of the art, once we implement some architectural changes to designs from photography perspective, once we model and capture the processes and obviously work side by side the internal customer teams to understand what can be changed manually, what can be changed automatically, we came to these numbers, and within these were an absolute gem in the industry norm, if you like, without sounding me pretentious in this case, but they were absolutely unique and one of a kind. So we reduced the number of level 1 agents to 135 from 270. It's almost like a double number. We reduced from 66 to 42 agents to level 2. The key, by obviously employing the best standards for workforce management capacity, we completely rediscovered the patterns and obviously the peak hours of incoming chats and phone calls, where we reduced from 22% of dependent calls to 2%, which is nothing for a team that was averagely receiving around 5,000 calls and chats touches per day. With of course following the more than double reducement of average sharing time for 12 minutes. 12 minutes is okay, because imagine this is something that I always like to illustrate as an example. Imagine that you need to call your shift center operator or whatever, or service desk operator in this case, telling them, hey, look, there's a serious 35% chance that I'm not going to reach, so I still need to wait and jeopardize my business. And on top of it, I need to speak in average at least half an hour with you in order to be able to pray for a solution that might not come because the solution was 37%. So that employee is absolutely discouraged, depressed, frustrated, doesn't have confidence in their own vendor, doesn't have confidence in their own management, doesn't have confidence in their own brand. So this is one of many reasons why of course, service centers were being used to kind of ease pain points for what's called the domicile workers in this case. And then one of the key things, of course, is the frustration and kind of anger and all these things slightly reducing, going down. The attrition went to only 2%. The industry norm is back in the day, it was between 7 and 9, 8, or say 6 and 9. This was 2. So this is a tremendous accomplishment one job really. And the ones, of course, stakeholders and everybody else are going to be focusing on total cost of operation that was reduced from 16.2 to 3 on 1 million, which is essentially key for them. And yes, that is the officially biggest win there. But knowing that you have to deal with 2,300 knowledge base articles, absolutely from my perspective. Because not only that you're doing all these things with the end customer, their operation day-to-day teams, but you're enabling them knowledge, you're empowering them by helping themselves without even calling us for support. So that's what I feel was the biggest win that was transitioning this customer.
If someone listening is dealing with something similar, where would you tell them to start? How would we start kind of with this transformation?
Yeah, just be well, I would start by always start to do a self analysis by employing certain internal number of individuals, or if you like, just to understand, is it severe or not? If it's severe, they need a professional. So they need a vendor, such as in this case, or is dealing with managed services or service centers, who's ready to tackle this by, of course, all your frameworks to analyze, to provide recommendations, and to do the delivery piece as well. So this is not a typical consultancy gig in a way, which is the whole point. This is a journey. This is a customer journey. We start here where nobody's happy, and after a lot of days when everybody's fighting, nobody's happy, we will gradually move to better states. So this is, of course, and I would absolutely advise that first of all start with some internal investigation, and then if the pain points are widespread, persisting, increasing, then it's time for professional help. Because all these things are not, that is the whole point, are not within the internal knowledge capacity of any given industry, because all these industries are doing their core work. This is customer examples in retail. They have stores, they do trade, they do commerce, they have ESG processes, they have a bunch of things that within the IT, they're IT knowledgeable, but they don't have the knowledge how to self-improve.
Yeah.
That's the main thing.
All right, moving on to the next case study we have here is an optimization in pharma logistics, if you want to walk us through this one.
Yes, absolutely. This is a very interesting example as well. HQ in London, UK, back in time, so these things were quite easy from a reputation standpoint, and this was a good customer. Where we had a challenge of one of the biggest pharma logistics companies struggle with labor deficiencies and overly complex processes with a high number of repetitions and diverse and non-scalable changes in the process, which is a very tricky thing to explain. We don't have time now, but in general, like overcomplicated processes and labor inefficiencies. They result in operational waste and declining customer satisfaction. This is the biggest problem, especially with the logistics industry, where we have not only B2B but B2C models, and they are severely affecting, of course, the general kind of public image of the company or the client as well. So just to kind of summarize in an easier fashion, before we took over and before we employed all our things, all our processes and methodologies, we had a number of 245 employees with 382 processes. So after careful analysis and transportation processes, we implemented the full shared service center model. So we started with a couple of processes, a couple of people, just to see the gist of it, if this could be possible at all. Because of course you have different times, you have different regulations, you have different documentation. Back in the time, there was a different technology when it comes to automation, certain these nodes and requests, and so it was quite challenging. But we implemented the shared service center model in order to, of course, target the inefficiencies and to reduce them. So what we did is we optimized a number of employees by cross-skilling them and by obviously different educations and different skill sets for the different types of business within that one big business unit department. So we have full-time employee savings of 77 heads. So from 245, we reduced to 168. Which I find most important is, of course, we reduced the process from 382 to 226 to 226. But not only that, sometimes it's not even about the number, it's about how these processes are actually, how they're being executed, who's executing them, and what capacity and how is the key. So when I say that they had 226, they had 226, but without any process deviation, without any leakage, without any repetition. That is the key. This is what gives them visibility over the process and power over the output. It's in this case a pure delivery. And then, of course, we move on to operational cost reduction, where the overall cost reduction was done around 32%, and the customer really put an emphasis on CSAT improvements and their support from the end users in this case, the internal and the external, and they were really not measuring this. So we of course started with as is, and then we gradually moved to be state, and then we measured what was deployed. Of course, there was a 28% improvement there as well, because the customers felt that something was changing in the process, and most importantly, internal resources felt that something is changing, something is really different, it's better, it's more streamlined, it's actionable. It could be rolled back in a way if it doesn't work. So all these things were not that clunky and congested anymore. The fluidity of motion in any given process was present. And in total state, this resulted in total state of operation cost for almost 1 million, so 180K. And this was a very, very good venture, very good example of how can we employ shared service centers to help us in not only one domain, but multiple different streams of work and problems. Yes.
Was there any resistance to change? And if so, how did we help them work through that?
Absolutely, yes. Resistance to change is quite an interesting topic, and thank you for asking. Some geographics, some regions are more prone to this change, some more than the other. We were lucky, this one was not that prone, but still, when you are working for the customer in say, financially more developed regions, let's call it like that, there's always this huge fear of that this is going to become redundancy, this is going to be a rework, and the people will lose jobs. So I'm going to be honest and blunt, the good old days for this industry, the old school way of doing business, that was the case because the cuts were being executed immediately, or sorry, gradually, but like with a incentive that it's going to give them immediate help or relief in this case. And all of this was stressful for the employees and for the management itself as well. But luckily, again, kind of moving on to this 225 story, in the last couple of years, let's say 7 or 8 years, the situation is completely different and it's drastically improved for the employees and employers and vendors itself in this case. Because look, we live in such a volatile time with the greatest economic uncertainty in a way, and uncertainty. We don't know what's going to happen geopolitically because things around us are absolutely crazy and everything seems random and there's no logic to it. So that we have so many geopolitical issues, wars, infrastructure crises, errors, issues, misalignments of variety sorts, especially in the economy. So we have this on one side, and the other side, we have this fear of unknown because we're employing so many new technologies and then AI ultimately. But because of that, companies realize one thing: time to hire is extremely high, and nobody wants to do time to hire and to make a mistake, or nobody wants to cut a good resource, which we are good resources in the end. I think so, but companies have understood that they need to upskill and move their people, especially if they're already in internal resources. So I know, of course, that doesn't look like what's happening in Silicon Valley in the past 2 years. We're far from it. But in general, rule of thumb, when speaking with some executives, like whoever is employing this type of reorganization, usually these entities and these organizations are really kind of moving their employees, finding the new career paths, because it's super expensive to hire someone else. So super expensive and super time consuming, which ultimately, from a ROI perspective, is a bad metric. I'm not talking about the general reconstruction of companies who are just laying off people because they can. I'm talking whoever is willing to employ this as an ally has a firm 3 to 5 year mission ahead and kind of mentality that will help them out in the long run. So once you invest, going back to the original question, sorry. So once you invest a lot of time to penetrate this shield of obviously and sphere that is rightfully there, then you get to certain better co-op levels. And then you obviously, again, going back to the original first minute of our conversation, once you instill some trust, the situation is completely different. So it's a tedious and challenging task, and there's no magic wand, and there's no like a magic formula for this. It requires time, dedication, integrity, and directness and complete honesty, so everybody's on the same page.
And now to round us out, Danilo, what's one piece of advice you'd give companies thinking about modernizing their shared service centers?
First piece of advice, and I cannot stress this enough, especially in the last few years, is that, sorry guys, you need to spend money. Money needs to be spent because investment needs to be there. I know it's difficult, I know it's super tricky, I know this volatility that I was mentioning 2 minutes ago is not an ally for all of us, and I know that with this comes financial uncertainty as well. Every wrong move, some some have little triple blocks, so this is all absolutely clear for me. But without investment, there's no progress. So it's very, very simple. These things are not cheap. These things are not cheap. Sorry, they are affordable depending on all these types of services and modes that you're interested to acquire from every vendor, not only us. It's absolutely customizable. But without investment, there's no proper return. And in this case, it's a bit clunky and it's robust, but with a good roadmap, with a good explanation, with a good 3 to 5 years, this is almost becoming a must have. In case the company is really aligned towards a proper, how to say, like a proper cost saving model without reorganizing. So, so spend in order to save.
I like that. Well, thank you everyone for joining us. Whether you're watching live or catching the replay, we hope this gave you a better picture of what modern shared service centers can look like and how AI is more than a buzzword when it comes to real operational change. If anything we shared today sparked any ideas or challenges you're facing, feel free to reach out. We're always happy to continue the conversation or share more examples. Next time, we'll be sitting down with Sergio Lopez Yantelli to talk about Process Maker, one of the platforms we work with often to build custom workflows and applications for our clients. Thank you for listening, and thank you, Danilo, so much for the wonderful conversation. We hope that you join us next time.
Sophia, it was an absolute pleasure. Thank you so much for hosting me and organizing all of this and pointing me to the right direction because I can't talk, as you can see now. So, and thanks for everybody who listened and who joined. And wish you all the best. Hopefully, see you soon.
Thanks, everyone.
Bye.